I don't know about y'all, but I find it incredibly frustrating trying to learn new things. Maybe it's a new hobby, a lifestyle change, or even a new job. Either way, it's so annoying to see people online or in real life making this new thing you're trying to accomplish look easy. It's in moments like these where we need a little perspective, and we have to realize that starting anything new takes time. Now, I realize I'm not breaking new ground here. You've probably heard this a million times already. However, what I want to do in this video is to break down the behind-the-scenes action requirements that build you up from absolute beginner to competent proficiency. Now, today we're going to break down the 5 steps I believe are necessary to learning new things. But before we dive straight into this, let's real quick touch on the foundational principle behind this video, which is the parable of the pottery class. Now, as far as I can find, this parable originated from the 1985 book Art and Fear, Observations on the Perils and Rewards of Art Making. Now, this story involves a pottery class that is divided into 2 groups. One group would make 1 pot every day until the end of the semester, and the other group would focus on creating 1 and only 1 pot perfectly and turn that in at the end of the semester. Now, unsurprisingly, every single one of the best pots were made by the group who made a new pot every single day. Now, this shocking revelation hopefully comes as a surprise to absolutely no one, but what this parable and most productivity advice leaves out is what did those pottery makers adjust every day to improve their craft. Anyone who has tried something new has clearly been met with struggles along the way and has been frustrated to the point of quitting. How do we avoid this trap and allow ourselves to push on and improve? That is exactly what we're going to discuss today. And with all that out of the way, here are the 5 steps I recommend that you do when learning something new. Step 1, do beginner level research. Now, the key word here is beginner. With any new skill you're researching, you are going to be flooded with hundreds of different techniques, skill levels, and strongly worded opinions about what the right way to go about doing the thing is. Your ultimate aim is to identify what the bare essentials are for you to get started. Now, this doesn't just include the beginner techniques. At this stage, you're going to need to figure out what equipment you need, how much money you need to spend, and even your environment plays a factor. All these things you have to consider. Now, for the sake of argument during this video, let's assume we're trying to learn a new skill like photography, okay? So let's do some beginner research. Now, almost immediately, you're going to run into a problem. You are going to be instantly flooded with dozens of fanboys fiercely protective over their favorite camera brand. Not to mention lens selection, natural light versus artificial light, on camera versus off camera flash, shooting in fully automatic versus aperture priority, mirrorless versus DSLR, zoom versus prime. It never ends unless you put a stop to it. I was in this exact situation several years ago when I first got into photography. It was incredibly frustrating to try to find my way through all the noise and collective opinions of the internet, but eventually I found what I was looking for. Now, you don't have to spend thousands of dollars on 20 different pieces of equipment. Like most things, what you're going to find during your research was that the skills and talent beat out the equipment that was used in most situations. Settle on a camera brand and lens that are well within your budget and that is good enough to get you going. Now, more crucially than the equipment are the skills that you need to master it. Every new skill or activity has its own language associated with it. Understanding this is so critical to you moving forward in your journey. Now, in the case of photography, you're going to run across terms like the rule of thirds, composition, exposure, and depth of field. The camera doesn't matter if you don't know how to use it and how to get the most out of it. Now, this is what your beginner level research is all about. It's about arming yourself with just enough knowledge to get yourself going in the right direction. Now, once you've done that, well, you're ready to move on to step 2. Step 2, get started. Okay, so you've made your decision. You're a proud new owner of a used mirrorless camera and 2 used lenses because during your beginner level research, you learned that used gear can be had at a great price and is more than enough to get you started. All right, so now what? Well, now you got to get started. Everything you ran across in your beginner level research, you are now going to put into practice. It doesn't matter what you do initially, just get familiar with this new thing you're trying. You know, it's all foreign to you at first. You know, holding your first real camera, it's going to feel kind of weird initially. It's heavier than you imagine. The sheer volume of buttons and knobs feels a little overwhelming. The lens looks fragile and your first set of images looks terrible compared to what you capture on your phone. Again, this is all perfectly fine. All you're doing is getting started in this step. You've made the first move down a new path. Most people are so paralyzed by fear of failure and fear of the unknown that they never even make it to this step. So the fact that you made it this far is fantastic. Now, after you're done patting yourself on the back, it's time to move on to step 3. Step 3, make mistakes and adjust. Now, let's get one thing out in the open up front. During this step, it is perfectly okay to get frustrated. The entire point of this step is to pick a skill, you try it for yourself, fail at the thing, then try again until you get it right. Now, maybe I'm just a naturally impatient person, but this step infuriates me to no end. I absolutely hate it when I see someone doing the exact same thing as me, but I just can't seem to replicate it. So in the case of photography, an example of this might be you are trying your hardest to capture in-focus pictures of fast-moving subjects like your kids or pets. Now, no matter what you do, the pictures either turn out too blurry or they're too dark. Yes, this is more than enough to infuriate anyone. Ask me how I know. It's during this step that it's important to reflect on why you started learning the new thing in the first place. No new skill can be learned without some hiccups and teething issues along the way. It's all new to you, right? When things get frustrating beyond measure, this is the perfect opportunity to go back to YouTube or some Facebook group and you seek out an answer to this very specific question that you're having. If you're a beginner and running into an issue at the start of your journey, well, the chances are very high that others have experienced the exact same frustrations that you're feeling right now, and they've made a post or video about it. Don't keep trying to squeeze that square peg into a round hole. Make your mistakes now, figure out how to fix and adjust. Now, this is exactly how the pottery class got better and where the parable gained its fame in the productivity niche. However, in my opinion, what they failed to mention is what more than likely came next after they made their mistakes. Number 4, put your results out there. Every single day, one group would make a new piece of pottery and every single day mistakes were made. But how did they know that mistakes were made? They're beginners, right? How did they know what right looks like? And more importantly, how did they fix those mistakes? Well, the only way they could have learned from their mistakes is to put their results out there to be seen. If you act in a vacuum and never compare your results to others, how will you know what right looks like? Put your flawed results out there for others to see. Don't try to hide them and wait until they're perfect to put them out there. If you try and wait until it's perfect, you'll never do anything with it and you'll keep holding yourself back. Now, going back to our photography example, after a few weeks of trying out new techniques and having a firm grasp on the basics, the photos are starting to look pretty decent, right? But how will you know they're good until you compare them to what good actually looks like? I know this is going to be tough, but you've got to put your photos out there for people who know more than you to give you feedback. Ask them, what can be improved? What could you have done differently? What would they have done differently? There's no reason to get upset by this. You're still in the learning phase. Just put your results out there and learn from the masters. Now, honestly, this really isn't as scary as it sounds. As long as you don't come off as arrogant, most people will eagerly help beginners to improve. I'm not saying there aren't mean-spirited people out there in the internet. They do exist online, but the likelihood of them roasting you to no end and just because you're asking advice is fairly low. Put your work out there and seek out feedback so that you can improve. Step 5, comparing your end to your beginning. Okay, so now this is the fun part. If you've made it this far in your journey, then you should congratulate yourself on a job well done. You have dedicated yourself to learning something new, figured out what you need to get started, fought through the vast amount of new things that you've had to learn, and you've pushed through those pain points of trying and failing numerous times over. The only thing that's left is to reassure yourself on how far you've come. We're so hyper focused on learning that new thing, that new technique, or mastering that new piece of equipment that we don't just stop and reflect on just how far we've come from when we started. Now, this step doesn't have to take long, but it does need to be deliberate. Compare your photos from where you currently are from where you started all those weeks, months, maybe even years ago. The reason you're so hypercritical of your work is because you're comparing yourself to people who have been taking photos for years. What you should concern yourself with is not how your photos compare to theirs, but how your current photos compare to your past photos. Now, this step is not a signal for you to stop learning and stop improving your craft. By all means, keep learning and progressing. The goal of this step is to reassure yourself that you are on the right path. You just need some fresh perspective that this thing that you've sunk your time and money into, that it hasn't been a complete waste. I think you'll be more than pleased with your results after seeing just how far you've come. So while it may seem like the overall lesson here is to be centered around quantity over quality, the real aim of this video was to highlight that along the way of learning something new, there are dozens of opportunities to get frustrated and quit. Now, hopefully everything discussed here today has addressed the roadblocks you might experience on your own path to trying to learn anything new. Photography, video editing, and crafting compelling YouTube video scripts, these are all skills that I didn't have in the not so distant past. It took a lot of research, time, trial and error to figure out how to do these things in a more than just okay manner. I can freely admit that I got frustrated and I wanted to give up along the way. But at the end of the day, all the issues I was running into were never more than just a YouTube search away. I believe that by using the steps outlined throughout this video, you too can learn any skill that you choose to as well. No, it probably won't happen overnight, but it can happen faster than you think. This is a pretty low risk, high payoff situation, so you might as well give that thing that you you want to try a shot. As always, guys, I appreciate you all taking the time to listen to me ramble on. Thanks again. I got many more videos to follow. Y'all take it easy.